Secretary says Rwanda is ready to receive migrants and she hopes to start deportation flights by the summer. Suella Braverman has continued her visit to Rwanda, where earlier today she met with students from Kepler, a non-profit university programme where at least 25% of its students are refugees. Ms Braverman also attended a street fair which was organised to celebrate Commonwealth Day. The UK and Rwanda are vowing to step up efforts to tackle migration. The agreement between the two countries has been expanded to include all illegal migrants and not just asylum seekers.
Progress is being made rapidly, and I'm really confident on the back of the progress that I've seen here in Kigali that we will be able to operationalise this world-leading agreement very, very soon. The big point here is that there will be a package of high-quality humanitarian support for people who will be relocated to Rwanda. That, combined with our robust new laws, will enable us to break the business model of the people smuggling gangs.
Now, the deal with Rwanda has cost £140 million, which Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Lisa Nandy says could have been better spent.
We think you should take that money, put it into the National Crime Agency, create a cross-border cell that disrupts the criminal gangs and send the clearest possible message to those criminal gangs that their behaviour won't be tolerated and that will bring them to account should they persist. Instead, we've had more and more of the tough talk from this government, and last year the boat crossings hit a record high of 45,000. It's not working, and it's about time the government recognised that.
Boris Johnson will publish evidence in his defence over allegations he misled Parliament on Partygate. He's expected to submit a dossier to the Commons Privileges Committee tomorrow before being questioned by MPs on Wednesday. The investigation is being chaired by Labour's Harriet Harman, but the panel has a Conservative majority. And the King has paid tribute to the late Queen on the first Mother's Day since her death last September. The royal family tweeted a picture of King Charles as a baby standing on the Queen's lap. A picture of the Queen Consort with her mother was also posted. The Prince and Princess of Wales shared a picture of their children with Kate, with a message saying Happy Mother's Day from our family to yours. TV, online and DAB plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's over to Free Speech Nation.
Oxfam tackles the evils of the colonial English language, Donald Trump claims he's about to be arrested, and Netflix supports the plight of non-binary bison. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And, of course, we're going to be keeping you updated on the latest antics of those delightful culture warriors, which means we're in for a very busy 2 hours. Coming up on the show tonight, the heyday of lads magazines may be long behind us, but some people think they're to blame for the rise in toxic misogyny. We're going to be asking if that is indeed true. A lecturer in international law will be here to tell us about the significance of the arrest warrant issued against Vladimir Putin by the International Criminal Court. We'll ask if the demise of the Silicon Valley Bank means that so-called woke capitalism has failed. And myself and my wonderful panel will be answering questions from this delightful studio audience. All that and much more tonight on Free Speech Nation. But first, my studio guests this evening are Jonathan Cogan and Francis Foster. Welcome. Hello both. How are you, Francis?
I'm very well. How are you, Andrew?
Well, mediocre, I would say. Yeah, 9%.
No.
You've got a show coming up, haven't you?
Yes, I'm doing a show at the Etc. Theatre on April the 5th. I think that's a Wednesday, or the 6th, one of the two. See, some people play massive theatres, but I play the smallest theatre in London. Well, the
Etc. Theatre, I should say it's in London, the Etc. Theatre. It's in Camden, I think, isn't it? And there's about 50 seats in that.
42.
42? It's the big time for you, Francis.
Yeah, it is, mate. It is.
What's wrong with that? You normally play for
tickets still available. 42, it's going to be wonderful. I'm also there.
Right, we're trying to sell it, Jonathan.
Oh, sorry.
You're going to be performing at the same show?
Yeah, no, there'll be some good people as well. It won't just be me. Yeah, it's going to be wonderful.
No,
And I'm doing good. I'm covered in cat hair. I've been playing with a cat today.
Why did you do that?
Mother's Day. And there's just...
Mother's Day, so you played with a cat?
Yes, quite right.
It doesn't make any sense, but I'm going to leave it at that and move on. I like the cryptic opening to the show. Let's start with some questions from the audience. We've got a question here from Vanda. Vanda?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Has Oxfam gone too far?
Now, Oxfam have been all over the news this week because, of course, they have, this is a charity, of course, have issued an inclusive language guide, which had been circulating amongst their workers for a long time, but all of a sudden it's out there, it's been published, and some of the suggestions are a bit odd. So they're saying that the word parent should be used instead of mother and father, with people who become pregnant to be used instead of expectant mothers. But they've also sort of outlawed words like headquarters, local, and even people. Francis, what's going on?
Right, so this is my theory on it. So Oxfam have published this very woke guide about what you can and can't say in their, well, not headquarters anymore, in one of their bases.
Yeah, they don't say headquarters, do
Yes,
they?
absolutely, because that's fascist. But you might remember, a year ago, they had a sex scandal, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, they did. So I'm thinking they've brought this out. So, you know, if your employees are indulging in a bit of gropey, they're not going to get the wrong pronouns, which is the most important thing.
That is far more important, isn't it?
That is far more important, because that's more offensive than the other stuff.
Now, this is weird, though, isn't it? Because, Jonathan, they're claiming that they're just being inclusive, OK?
Sure. Well, I actually used to work for Oxfam.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I was a guy in Haiti who organised all the prostitutes. It was a tough job.
Yeah.
No, what do I think about this? No, I've never had a job, obviously. What do I think? Yeah, it's obviously just trying to jump on that bandwagon. It's a bunch of good press, in quotes.
Is it, though? Because a lot of people are now saying they're not going to give money to Oxfam anymore. And, you know, the thing is, they say that this is inclusive.
It's going to be polarising, certainly.
Well, it's not inclusive. It's the opposite of inclusive, because, for instance, if you work for Oxfam, not in the way that you do, but people who actually work for Oxfam, the problem there is they might not support this ideological approach. To, you know, they might not support saying women instead of woman or cis or anything like that. So where does that leave those employees? I mean, some of them have been quoted anonymously saying that they don't really feel safe at work anymore because they can't express their opinions.
Well, this is a problem, and this goes to the very heart of the problem with this ideology, where you have a charity like Oxfam spending a lot of money on this type of nonsense, when in fact it could and should be spent on helping the very poorest people in the world.
I thought that's what it was for.
Well, no, it's about... No, it's not anymore, is it? I mean, that's what it used to be for, but not anymore.
This is something that Peter Boghossian said, the philosopher in America, talks about how when an institution becomes captured by an ideology, then it ceases to sort of function for its true purpose.
What you're saying is go woke, go broke.
Basically, go woke, go broke, insofar as it will just start promoting this idea of the world instead of doing what it's meant to be doing, and this is clearly what's happened here.
And that's certainly going to, I guess, stop people from wanting to donate, which means the people who need it are going to have less funding. So.
Right, exactly. It's not good for anyone. OK, well, we're going to move on to another question now. This one's from John. Where is John?
Hi.
Hi, John.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Should the Elgin Marbles be returned to Greece?
Ah, the Elgin Marbles. This old question, but this has come up again this week because Rishi Sunak has said that the Elgin Marbles will never return permanently to Greece. The marbles, of course, have been a long bone of contention between Greece and the UK. They've been in the British Museum for a long time. They are incredible. I think it's...
Because we looked after them.
OK. well, this is the question. I mean, it is absolutely true that had the marbles stayed on the Parthenon through all that time, they would have been depleted by rainwater, that kind of thing. They were preserved. However, about 100 years ago, the British Museum did a terrible cleaning job on them and actually damaged them. So I'm not so sure. But you're a patriot. Do you think that we should keep the things that we plundered? We should keep here.
Look, we found it, we keep it. That's it, that's how it works, doesn't it? Finders keepers.
I'm torn on this one. I mean, Lord Elgin apparently did have permission from the then owners of the marbles, the Ottoman Empire at the time.
Right.
And so therefore it's not the case that they were plundered, really. However, I've been to the Acropolis Museum. I've been...
In Athens?
In Athens, and I do think that if the marbles were there, they would have more impact. There would be kind of heightened poeticism to them being in the location they're meant to be. So I'm torn.
Okay, no, I can understand that. I mean, another thing I was thinking about is what does it mean to have ownership over something like that? Because it's not necessarily the same people or even the descendants of the same people who created it or built it. So how do you actually lay claim to something like that?
Yeah, and I suppose what
are the rules?
With a museum? I mean, museums around the world, if they started sort of sending back everything that was once...
It'd just be a gift shop.
It would just be the gift shop, which is great. I like a good gift shop.
Yeah.
But it would kind of enervate most museums, wouldn't it? I mean...
I'll be honest with you. I'm actually more on the side of giving it back to Greece, because the last time I went to the British Museum, they have gone so woke, it is unbelievable.
Have they?
Absolutely. So now I went to a Goddesses and Divinity exhibition.
Oh, yes. I saw that, yeah.
Right, and so you walk around and you think, oh, this is really nice, and then so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes a comedian podcaster, pops up, I'm not going to say the name, and they were like, I really like this spirit because they are non-binary.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not joking. And you're like,
so boring.
This is a Hindu spirit from 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, but what were its pronouns?
Yeah, exactly.
This is ridiculous. You know, this is happening more and more with museums. You go along to a museum, Shiva, very good. But you get these sort of plaques that are sort of attached to paintings, sort of lecturing you about what an evil person the artist was. Yeah, there was a weird one at the Hogarth exhibition at the Tate where they had a self-portrait of Hogarth on a chair, and there was a sign next to it saying the chair was made of wood, and wood probably came from plantations and is related to slavery. I'm like, it's a chair. I don't need to have this lecturing all the time about all this. I know slavery's bad, right? I don't need the...
Well, you do work at GBNews, so maybe it does need explaining.
Outrageous. Outrageous. Such bigotry from Francis Foster there is what we've come to expect. But we've got a question now from Danny. Where is Danny? Hi, Danny.
I'm all right. Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. My question is, do you think Donald Trump, Big Donny Trump, will be arrested this week?
Donny Trump, are you a mate of his? Yeah. Well, you know, so he thinks he's going to be arrested. He went onto his social media platform, it's called Truth Social. He says he thinks he's going to be arrested on Tuesday, and of course this is over these alleged payments to Stormy Daniels, the, well, let's say the adult film star, to be euphemistic about it. I mean, but there's lots of sort of sources are sort of suggesting that Trump is going to be arrested. Good thing or bad thing, Jonathan?
If he's done a crime and he's guilty, then definitely a good thing.
Right.
If he's innocent of this thing, then he shouldn't be arrested for it. I mean,
well, presumably he's posting it on Truth Social because he wants his.
He's getting ahead of it.
Well, maybe he's getting ahead of it, but I think he wants his followers to think that he is innocent, right? Presumably.
Right. Okay. If I was getting arrested, I would tell as fewer people as possible.
Yeah, but part of Trump's shtick is this idea that there's like mass conspiracies against him and that the election was stolen. And
he's doing the Andrew Tate thing. He's like, oh, the Matrix are coming for me. Like,
and then they do.
They came for him. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think of this?
Well, I think it's interesting because I don't think it's going to happen, and I don't think they're going to arrest him because I've looked into this story, and it's the fact that he gave payments to an adult film star.
Yes.
And that is the reason that he's going to be arrested. Is there any person on the planet who doesn't think Trump gave money to a porn star? There's literally nobody. We all know that he did it.
We've all done it.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Well, Jonathan, steady on.
Not all of us have worked for Oxfam, mate. But,
you are admitting way too much.
Cost of living crisis. I've not got shoes on. It's tough.
You actually haven't got any shoes on?
No.
You're on a TV show.
I gave them to a porn star. Yeah,
this is ridiculous. OK, sorry, carry on.
But... So no, I don't think so. But what I think Trump is trying to do is he's trying to appeal to his base. He's trying to galvanise his base because he wants to run again for office. We all know that.
Yes.
And he stands a very good chance of doing it.
If he does get arrested, though, I think it might even help him.
I think it will as well.
That's the only thing.
Because if he gets arrested, this is politicising in every shape and form.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, any other president, if they had done that, nothing would have happened to them.
Yeah.
Nothing. What, George W. Bush started an illegal war?
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Yeah, I think that's much worse than sleeping with Stormy Daniels and bunging her a few quid.
Very, very interesting. I still can't get over the fact you're not wearing shoes. Like that. It's very bizarre. Are you doing like a Huckleberry Finn? Like you just think you should just wander around?
I'm grounding my...
Is that what you're doing? Because that's what Mark Dolan does. He goes around barefoot in the street.
Oh, what a hippie! No, I'm they're just a bit dirty, and I didn't want to put them on TV. But I feel like I've drawn attention to it now.
You really have.
I'm like the Trump of this show. It's too much.
I'm not going to let you.
Everyone's like your eyes.
I'm going to mention this all night. Anyway, so weird. Okay, we've got a question now from Liam. Where is Liam? Hi, Liam.
Hi. Did the right film win the Best Picture Oscar
Yeah, there's been a lot of chat about this film, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which won the Oscar for Best Picture, won a whole sort of bunch of Oscars. This is apparently... I know I haven't seen this film. It's a science fiction film in which a middle-aged Chinese immigrant to America finds herself in multiple universes. That sounds quite good to me. It's apparently not very good. So there was an article this week by, what was his name, Brian Viner in the Daily Mail, talking about how, look, this isn't actually a very good film. Everyone knows it isn't really a good film, but it's more about the message of diversity and inclusion that makes this film, that rewards the film with the Oscar. But this is like, this has happened for years and years and years. Yeah. It's very rare that the best film wins best film. You know, it's often, it should be just called most fashionable film.
Well,
really.
Actually, what's really interesting as well is frequently the best film was never the best film because it was normally the best director from last year who did the best film. And then couldn't win it because it was the director from the year before who they needed to reward. So it's kind of happened like that. But I think the bigger question is, does anyone really care about the Oscars anymore?
No, they don't. I mean, no one really watches it anymore, do they? Like,
no.
It's really boring.
It's just a bunch of psychopath millionaires all on benzodiazepams just clapping at each other. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fun, actually. I'm going to be honest with you.
Quite good. But is it a good film? I mean, I remember back in the day, do you remember when Brokeback Mountain was up against Crash? And those two, and of course, Brokeback Mountain was an infinitely better film.
Yeah.
But Crash won. Crash was fine,
but
it was a sort of Sunday afternoon, I'll watch it and forget about it kind of film. And Brokeback Mountain was but because it was about issues that they particularly wanted to address that year, it won. And it was a weird kind of, it was very strange, I thought. But I don't expect the Oscars to reward the best film. I just don't.
No, because the thing is as well, the Oscars is incredibly political. You have to go out, you have to campaign, you have to talk to the Academy, the people, the members of the Academy. This takes a long time. They're all in their 80s, and you've got to keep reminding them because they're all a little bit senile.
No, so when I was in Hollywood, I saw these posters up on the all around the town saying, "Look at this film for your consideration," was the phrase. That all these posters. I mean, in other words, they're basically advertising. They're saying to people, "Give us an award, please."
Yeah.
You know, they're having to canvass for it. If it was the best film, people would just give it the award.
The one who actually deserves an Oscar is Will Smith for making the Oscars interesting again.
He did make it interesting.
Well, they gave him one. They gave him.
Yeah, they did, and he got a standing ovation.
That was the greatest.
I can't believe he hit someone and then got an award the same night.
Did a 20-minute speech and then was just dancing about it later on as if I haven't.
If I did that, right, they'd drag me off in cuffs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I admit Will Smith's a lot more talented than me, but even so, like, it's absolutely madness.
Yeah.
But you know, good on Chris Rock, because I actually think he really held his peace there.
He did. Did you see his special?
No, I didn't. He's talked about it in the special.
Yeah,
hasn't
his
he?
special is brilliant.
But I thought he was great because, you know, he didn't seem fazed by being hit at the Oscars, and it was the most.
And this is a guy who played Muhammad Ali. Will is he's
pretty strong. Yeah, absolutely. We need more of that at the Oscars. Make it more interesting.
Absolutely, we should do a hit.
It should just be lots of people fighting. OK, we've got a question now from Jackie. Where's Jackie? Hello.
Hi.
What's your question, Jackie?
Have you ever been impersonated by someone on OnlyFans?
On OnlyFans?
Oh.
OK, I'm not sure if I've been impersonated on OnlyFans. I don't think they'd make much money. But this is because of Adrian Chiles. So Adrian Chiles this week revealed that a man has been impersonating him. So he's sort of lookalike. Yeah. But on OnlyFans, so there's a guy in Leeds, looks a bit like Charles, and apparently he's going naked on OnlyFans and eating crumpets, I think.
There's a market for everything.
If you've got a fetish for sort of Adrian Chiles eating crumpets...
I didn't before.
Now that I've raised it, you know, you can see the appeal.
I can. I mean, how famous do you have to be to be impersonated on OnlyFans? Is that something that's happening?
No, because there's that, and there's also the proliferation of AI, where you get these sort of deep fakes, and people are sort of creating pornographic deep
I've been
fakes.
doing that with myself, making me have loads of muscles and stuff, and I'm slightly enamoured by my own creation. It's
OK, that's creepy. So what do you think about this, Francis?
Well, the interesting thing about OnlyFans is that everybody always thinks it's a ticket to wealth and success and all the rest of it, but I think it's only the top 1% earn an average salary.
Oh, is that right? I thought most people are raking it in.
No.
I saw some meme where a woman posted, like, I'm in top 30%, but she's making, like, $100 a month or something.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah. To get your kit off and, you know...
Yeah.
You don't have to be explicit.
So you really have to ask, OK, so this guy is on OnlyFans, and you know what? Fair play to him. How much money is he making? Because if he's like making tens of thousands in the buff just eating crumpets, he's a winner.
Yeah. Well, also, if there is a market for Adrian Chiles eating crumpets naked, then I want to know that.
Yeah.
Because society is broken at that point.
Do you think?
Well, I mean, I do. I don't
vanilla.
I don't like to get judgmental about people's sex lives, but come on, there has to be a limit, doesn't there?
Well, there does. I mean, you're getting very conservative in your own terms.
I am. I just think it's
wrong.
It's
and
wrong.
It should be banned.
It's evil. OK, after the break on Free Speech Nation, it's been a long time since lads magazines seemed to rule the publishing world. But did their success lead to a rise in toxic misogyny? I'm going to be joined by two great guests who are going to debate that particular issue. See you in a moment.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. They now seem like something of a relic of a bygone age, but back in the 1990s, so-called lads mags did huge business. Magazines such as FHM, Loaded and Nuts provided a mixture of humour, soft pornography and serious articles, and they sold thousands of copies. But was it fairly harmless fun? Flick Everett used to work for FHM and wrote a piece in the Mail this week voicing her concerns that the creation of lad mag culture led to a generation of toxic misogynists. So joining me to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome the journalist Martin Daubney, who used to edit Loaded magazine, and the TV personality and broadcaster Precious Muir. Welcome both. Precious, can I ask you first, what is your take on these lad mags? I mean, I wasn't the target audience, I presume you weren't the target audience, but do you think they were...
I mean, I was one of the talents, so obviously I have, like, you know, the perspective of the talent side where I was chosen to do something that I felt at the time was very empowering. I mean, I got a platform where I was able to pose for FHM, Maxim, Playboy.
Yes.
I mean, those days we didn't have access to Instagram, social media, so we couldn't access those companies.
Yes.
So the way that we got selected was through an agency process, and to be selected, it was like an accomplishment. It was a big goal.
So
and an achievement I'm very proud of.
Did anyone at the time ever say to you, you know, don't you feel exploited in any way? Or did you feel that in any way?
I mean, obviously the industry is full of the Weinsteins and the Jeffrey Epsteins and all of that stuff. I mean, we are going to come up against that. This is the entertainment industry.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you have to kind of navigate and go through the industry as best you can as a talent and try to keep your morals and respect, self-respect, to be able to go through this industry, because it is tough. It is very tough.
So Precious feels that, you know, it's your choice.
Yeah, it was my choice, and I was very proud to do it, and I would do it again.
And Martin was on the other side because you were, of course, the editor of Loaded magazine. So at the time, did you feel the same way that Precious has expressed here, that, you know, this is completely justifiable, this isn't creating a toxic culture?
Yeah, if you go back to the actual era itself, you know, men were pretty clueless about women, and they
still are.
Yeah, exactly. But they were getting their information about women from the problem pages of women's magazines, or like Deirdre.
Yes.
So the men's magazines initially became a sort of Haynes manual of how to unpack this confusing thing called the woman that I'd like to spend a bit more time with. And actually, Flick, who I used to commission, in fact, part of me, the toxic patriarch, I sent her to Miami to interview Lenny Kravitz. I'm sorry for being so sexist.
I mean, that does sound like a good gig, actually.
She had a great job, she loved it, and she was a good writer. And she used to write about sex and relationships from a women's perspective, to educate young men in how to be better.
Yes.
And so it wasn't at all misogynistic or sexist. However,
well, here we go.
The political environment at the time was extremely toxic against them.
Yes.
So cancel culture didn't exist until 2013, when a very powerful group of feminist activists called Loser Lads Mags campaign started charging into the AGMs of supermarkets, terrifying advertisers, going to W.H. Smith's, ripping the magazines off. They were really good. They were really good at social media, and they scared the pants off of our publishers who went into their bunkers, and it became a real political thing. David Cameron got involved.
Yes, I remember.
The Prime Minister. Then it became part of the porn matrix. The men's magazines were feeding this toxic online porn, therefore it's just as bad. And I reflected back when I left, because I became a dad, and I thought, was I a part of this? Because my family had been subjected to domestic violence, and to be accused that my magazine had been feeding that was a terrible thing to hear.
Can I bring Precious in on this?
Yeah.
Because is this possible that, you know, because the magazines seem to promote a certain idea of what it means to be a male, what it means to be a boy,
Exactly.
and that actually it might have been pushing the more let's say, unpleasant aspects of masculinity.
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
Well, I feel like if a man is going to be sexist, it doesn't matter how the woman is dressed. I mean, at the end of the day, it's down to the individual man to change how he is and how he perceives women. I'm not going to change who I am to please another man so he can then decide to treat me better. I should be able to be who I am, and men should know how to adjust to that. I shouldn't have to change who I am, stop being beautiful or standing in front of a photographer to take pictures for these magazines, because then they will learn how to treat me. That doesn't make sense.
That's an argument for individual agency, which I completely support and understand. But I suppose the counter-argument would be, well, these magazines were aimed at young men who are still sort of formulating their way in the world.
But this is going to be it's evolved. Basically, now we've got porn. So this has got nothing to do with how things are perceived now. Things are going to change. It's evolved. So now the difference is we've got the internet. So the accessibility of these kind of images will make no sense in a magazine. So this will never work now. But in the past, we never had access to Instagram and, as I said, social media. So things have changed. And now I can actually navigate the narrative. As a woman, I can post something on social media, and that is down to me to be in control of the situation. In the past, I was relying on editors like this to make sure that I was in the limelight and actually giving me that element of my career to a further success. There is many women from those magazines that have gone on to amazing careers, including including myself, who's navigated through and not just stayed in that industry.
Yes.
That was just a platform. That was just a step forward to going where I wanted to go. If you allowed your career to take you to somewhere else, that's your choice.
So, Martin, I think that's a very compelling argument for the way in which these magazines helped a lot of people in their career. I mean, but can you give us any example of where you think it might have had a toxic impact?
Well, in the article that you mentioned from Flick Everett, she mentioned that Andrew Tate magically was poisoned by men's magazines with no proof whatsoever. I do know that Prince Harry was a loaded reader, because we had a photograph of him in Afghanistan with loaded in the desert. Well, he's the king of woke now. So it's nonsense, I think, to assume that millions upon millions of men consumed a product, but it only poisoned people.
Yes, but if you take, I mean, I remember seeing, and I wasn't, as I say, the target audience, but seeing Nuts magazine, flicking through Nuts magazine, and it seemed to be just a combination of naked women, explosions, and close-up shots of wounds, almost saying to men, you should be able to look at this bone sticking out of a footballer's knee because that'll make you more of a man, and it felt at the time a bit regressive.
It's undeniably true that as the magazines moved on, they became reductively more about, the whole thing was more birds, less words. It was pictures. It became more like a comic book for masculinity, if you like.
Right.
Whereas when we got involved, we actually did like the writing bit, and the readers liked reading the writing bit that we liked as well. But an interesting point you made about the internet and how it changed everything. After I left Loaded, I made a TV show for Channel 4 called Porn on the Brain. I wanted to look at my magazine's role in this framework of getting young men into porn that the Prime Minister, the Daily Mail, was saying is becoming a real problem. It's
like it's a gateway.
A gateway, like a nursery, like a pathway drug. And we interviewed criminal psychologists, the people working at the Tavistock Clinic before it got taken over by trans ideology. They were actually working with the young men who were being poisoned by porn. The men's mags never even featured. And when I spoke to anti-porn campaigners who spent their entire life getting into it because of magazines like Playboy and Hustler, and I said to them, would you change things? They said, we would take back those magazines in a heartbeat if we could unplug the internet.
Because that's an interesting point, isn't it, Precious, that, now things have changed, like you say.
Yeah, they've progressed.
They've got access to everything.
They have access to everything, and everybody's needs have become even more extreme. So it's like, some of the men who would even see something like vintage FHM and Loaded wouldn't even get the same experience or the same feel as they would back then till now. Things have evolved so badly that people's perception of sex and women have gone,
Do you take the view, though, that some of the extreme examples of pornography that even children can access, that does have a damaging
this to me
effect?
is one of the main things that I'm very, very, it's something that I've always said, social media should be only for 18 plus. I believe that it's an adult environment and only adults should access it, because there's so many things on there that children should not be seeing before the ages that they're seeing them.
But that concern wouldn't be the case with the Lads mag.
But the Lads magazines are sold in stores and they're very high up, well, back in the day. They weren't, who's giving them money to buy these magazines? It's the parents, and they would never get them. And
the fascinating thing
it's
about
totally
that
different.
Is you're dead right. After I went around schools around Britain, I spoke to about 45,000 British teenagers about pornography and their role in it, trying to help them to become critical consumers, rather than saying, oh my God, you're going to be a rapist, because that's what the Daily Mail was saying, that's what the Prime Minister was saying, that's what the BBC was saying, and getting in there. And I was approached by so many parents after lectures who said, I used to love it when my boy...
I wish they were this passionate about the internet. I wish they were.
But they used to say, I loved it when my boy bought FHM or Loaded, because I used to know what he was reading.
Right.
I knew where he was going.
Yeah.
Now I don't know where he's going.
A little bit.
And I said to the feminist critics at the time, you'll miss us when we're gone. I think they do.
Right, well, look, we could talk about this forever. This is a fascinating topic, but unfortunately we're out of time. Thank you so much to my guests, Precious and Martin. Really appreciate you both coming on. After the break, though, on Free Speech Nation, Dr. Maria Varaki, a lecturer in international law, will join us to discuss the significance of the arrest warrant issued for Vladimir Putin by the International Criminal Court. Do not go away.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my wonderful panel, Jonathan Cogan and Francis Foster, and they're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems at all, just email us, because we will sort your life out. Our email is gbviews@gbnews.uk. It should be on the screen right now. Email us and tell us what your issues are. Now, in what has been described as a dramatic move, the International Criminal Court has issued a warrant for the arrest of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The court alleges that Putin is responsible for what it describes as the war crime of unlawfully deporting children from occupied areas of the Ukraine to the Russian Federation. In the seemingly unlikely event that Putin enters one of the court's member states, they are obliged to arrest him and transfer him to The Hague for trial. So to discuss this, I'm joined from Rome by the lecturer in international law, Dr. Maria Veracchi. Good evening, Maria. Thanks for joining me. Can I begin by asking you about Vladimir Putin and what he thinks of The Hague? He surely doesn't recognise the jurisdiction of the ICC, so will this really make any difference?
Well, it was very obvious, that he doesn't recognize the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, and that's why he paid a visit already to Crimea and late last night to Mariupol. And that's why many people say that the arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court have only a symbolic value. I do believe, that it's more important, it's more than a symbolic value. Some people claim also that the arrest warrants have a moral value. I would say that the International Criminal Court sends a message to other people, a message of deterrence, that those particular behaviors, as you mentioned, the unlawful transportation of of children from occupied territories is a criminal behavior, and that can be considered a war crime.
And the ICC believes that it has sufficient evidence that he has done this. I think they're suggesting up to 6,000 children. Is that persuasive?
Well, clearly, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court had to explain it in civil terms, to persuade the judges that he has substantial evidence. So the judges acknowledge that there is reasonable ground that this particular crime has been committed, allegedly has been committed. The Ukrainian side talks of almost 1,600,000 people, kids who have been transferred to Russia. There is a vast number of children, and this is something that has to be investigated for sure.
So, can I ask you about Vladimir Putin's position here? You know, this, as you say, is a gesture, really, from the ICC. This is effectively them saying that they don't approve of Putin and that they're willing to take a stand against him. But it's also quite unprecedented, isn't it? I mean, there's been a few times where they've issued warrants for sitting heads of state. I think Gaddafi was one example. But generally speaking, they don't do this, do they?
Well, this is, as you said at the beginning of your reportage, it's a dramatic move. And clearly the International Criminal Court took a very, very unprecedented step here to issue an arrest warrant against the sitting head of state. But that has happened in the past. It has happened for Sudan. It's not the first time. In this case, it happened because we are talking about the president of a permanent member of the Security Council of the UN, and someone who is not a country that is not a state party to the International Criminal Court. So this is a very audacious step, I would say, on behalf of the International Criminal Court. My belief is that they have a very solid basis in order to proceed with that kind of move. On the other hand, you know, the court sent a message, and we saw the reaction by President Putin, who visited Crimea and Mariupol, sending his own message back to the rest of the international community.
Do you think, Dr. Veraki, that there is a risk that this kind of gesture, however well-intentioned it might be, could escalate tensions, or indeed that Vladimir Putin might use it to his advantage to suggest that, you know, he's put upon by the international community?
Yeah, of course, we have seen it already. You know, the court has been described from the Russian side as a neo-colonial, hegemonic Western project. We have seen that, and of course, we expected that type of reaction on behalf of Russia. One of the main questions when we have an international judicial intervention, such as the one that we have from the International Criminal Court, is to what extent those arrest warrants can put at risk a possible peace process. You know, what happens, to what extent we can have President Putin back to the negotiation table. And here, as I keep saying, we have to be very realistic, very honest, and very pragmatic, and to inquire to what extent there is a genuine belief and good faith on behalf of President Putin to bring himself around the negotiation table. So I don't think that actually the particular intervention by the court might derail or risk anything. I think, and this was very obvious from the statement that the court issued, that they said, you know, they are doing it for deterrent purpose, to send a message, to convey a message that that type of behavior is unacceptable and it's a criminal behavior for other senior officials.
Is it your view then that there is a diplomatic solution ultimately to this conflict?
Ooh, that's a very tricky question. Well, we are talking about illegal occupation. We are talking about annexation. Ideally, we would all like a diplomatic solutions, but there are so many things at stake, and both sides, they have issued so many important points, both from the Ukrainian side. They cannot accept the annexation of the eastern Ukraine, not to mention Crimea since 2014. So this is a very difficult and tricky question. We all hope for the best, for the future. This irrational war has to cease. We have so many victims for really no reason here.
Dr. Maria Veraki, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, I can't see a solution out of this other than you've got to kind of placate Vladimir Putin's ego. He has to be able to go back to Russia and say, you know, look, we got something out of this. It wasn't all a waste. I mean, what do you think of this, Francis?
Well, I think
as nice as a gesture is, I think it's a glorified virtue signal, because the reality is...
Well, the arrest warrant.
The arrest warrant, because the reality is he's never going to be arrested for his crimes.
No, he's not, is he? No.
And also, let's be fair as well, it's a little bit hypocritical, the West pointing their fingers at Vladimir Putin going, you're going to have an arrest warrant, you need to be in The Hague, when George W. Bush and Tony Blair walk around having committed an illegal invasion of their own.
What do you make of that? Couple of people in the audience very much on Francis's side there. Do you want to take a counter view?
Well, I was still thinking about the lads' mags, to be honest.
From earlier.
Yeah, I think Putin read too many and it set him on a bad path.
Well, it's certainly possible. I can always count on you for a sensible contribution to the debate. Anyway, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be asking if the BBC's decision to axe a celebrated choir reflects a troubling set of priorities at the corporation. See you in a few minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The BBC has been hitting the headlines of late due to the saga involving football presenter Gary Lineker, but have we been ignoring a more troubling development at the corporation, and one which could have wider implications for the future? The much-loved BBC Singers are considered one of the most prestigious choral groups in the world, but they will be dissolved this summer in a cost-cutting exercise, a decision which has prompted anger in the arts community. So here to consider the implications, I am joined by the historian and political commentator David Oldroyd-Bolt. Hello, David. So, they're cutting the Singers. How much money are they saving, and is it worth it?
Well, Richard Morrison, the chief critic of the Times, estimates that they're saving about £1.5 million.
which might sound like a lot for 24 singers, but you have to consider that it's not just the singers that form part of that budget, it's the works that are written for them, which have to be paid for, of course. Composers don't work for free. It's the rehearsal spaces they use, it's the transport costs, it's the lodging and accommodation costs, if ever they have those, which seems to me like a bargain, frankly. This is something that is considered in the music world one of the great achievements of British performance over the past century. And I think the fact that the BBC have chosen to get rid of them in their 99th year, not even to let them reach the century, is churlish at best and downright arrogant at worst.
There is the sense in which the BBC often seem to cut some of their best things. I remember they were going after BBC 4, which was one of their better channels.
Well, BBC 4 is now, to all intents and purposes, gone, but in the years leading up to its removal, had in any case been diluted. I think the problem with the BBC is it's absolutely embarrassed by the idea that it might stick to its foundational principles and broadcast the best.
Yes.
They seem to have a real animus against anything that could be considered high culture or high art, which I think stems, on the one hand, as I say, from embarrassment that they shouldn't be doing this, but on the other, from a really deep condescension towards and hostility towards their audience. I think there is a really great cadre within the BBC that thinks that ordinary people, as they so demeaningly call them, can't appreciate high art. Now, this is rubbish. If you think back to the 1970s, when Humphrey Burton was in charge of broadcasting the BBC, of its classical music output, there were often weekly relays of opera from the best opera houses in the world, and he's got 4 million viewers. Now, fine, there were fewer channels and there was less choice, but this still shows to me that there is a great appetite for high culture, as we might call it. And the BBC now will not provide that unless it's forced to, almost at the point of a gun.
So this is a very interesting question about what is the BBC for? And obviously, you go back to the original Reith principles of to inform, educate and entertain. Do you think that they are sticking to those principles? Are they even potentially taking them too far in their idea that they should educate the masses? What do you think about that?
I don't think they're doing anything to educate the masses. I think they're doing a great deal to condescend to them, and they're chasing what I will call a commercial imperative, which the corporation does not have.
Yes.
It's paid for out of a poll tax. They don't need to make advertising revenue. They don't really need to think that much about their viewing figures because it's there. What they should be doing is thinking of how best they can serve the people of this country who are their paymasters, and leave things like Strictly Come Dancing, leave the PAP to ITV, leave it to Channel 4. Why not give people things that are worth preserving?
Well, surely if they're going to chase the commercial imperative, what's the point of the licence fee? Why not become a streaming service?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they undermine their own argument for existence by doing things like this. I think it is now inconceivable. Well, in fact, we saw that it's inconceivable that a programme like Civilization would be made nowadays.
Yes.
Because when the remake was done, or the updated version, it was done in the way that the BBC now thinks it absolutely must do anything that's vaguely serious, which is to dress people up and have them prancing around to the sound of irreverent music in order to dumb down as far as possible because they're terrified of seriousness.
That's a very interesting comparison. I mean, if you go to the Kenneth Clarke series, the original series of Civilization, and you watch it and you think it assumes that the audience have patience, that they're interested in difficult ideas, that they're intelligent. It assumes intelligence.
Exactly.
But the Civilization series didn't do that.
No, I think that the original series treated the audience with the courtesy of treating them as though they are, in fact, capable of taking on board these ideas, as though they want to do, and as though they don't need to be talked down to like preschool children. You know, with Kenneth Clarke in the original Civilization, you just had an expert, the world expert in this period of art, talking to an audience, and they were expected to listen and enjoy it. In the more recent one, you had people who, I come back to this word, I think they're embarrassed and scared of coming across as serious, as treating high art and culture and the greatest ideas that have ever been thought with the gravity they deserve.
Yes.
And it doesn't do any good for the programmes, it doesn't do any good for the presenters, and it certainly doesn't do any good to the licence fee payers who are treated like idiot children.
It's certainly true that when I watch sort of older programmes that were created by the BBC, I feel I breathe a sigh of relief. I think I'm not being patronised, or like Civilization is a wonderful example, but they also used to have the Play for Today. Really interesting, challenging things that I just don't believe would be commissioned today.
Well, I think that's a very good point, because so much of the work of the BBC in the post-war period was commissioning new works, new plays, new literature for Radio 4, and new concert pieces for the Proms and for its many other concert series. And if you start getting rid of orchestras and choirs, I mean, the BBC Singers is the only full-time chamber choir that this country has. It's 24 people. Are we really saying that out of a tax base of 40-odd million people, we can't continue to employ 24 people who are at the very, very height of their game, not just here, but all around the world? The composer and conductor Pierre Boulez said that this ensemble was the jewel in the crown of the whole BBC.
Yes.
And they're getting rid of it with such callous indifference.
To what extent do you think that this is connected to what we have often called the ideological capture of the BBC, insofar as there is a kind of mistrust of the heights that our culture has produced, which is wrapped up in this idea of tearing down statues, destroying history, mistrusting straight white male authors, such as Shakespeare and Chaucer, for instance.
No, I think, yeah, that's part of it. They perceive that the audience for classical music is only middle-aged or old white people.
Yes.
Because, again, it's part of the condescension of the BBC that they would not consider that, say, a poor black person or a young white person could possibly be interested in this music that was written, in some cases, hundreds of years ago.
And that is the bigotry of low expectations. I mean, we've seen that when there was the attempt to say that young, predominantly black schools shouldn't have Mozart on their music curriculum. They should have Stormzy instead, which is basically suggesting that young black people are incapable of understanding great music.
I know he's not a greatly popular figure on this channel, but Michael Gove did come up with one wonderful phrase, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yes.
And I think that permeates the broadcasting of the BBC and the education sector as anyway. But the problem with this is that by saying that these people couldn't possibly understand it, you never give them the chance to.
Yes.
And that, to me, is the worst form of bigotry.
So what is the solution here? How do we address these issues with the BBC? They're obviously making these cuts whether we like it or not. But
well, maybe not. There are more than 133,000 people have signed a petition against the cuts to the BBC singers, so perhaps there is just a glimmer of hope that it might be reversed.
So do you think that people just need to make a noise about it?
Yes.
Sort of say how they want the BBC to be run, effectively?
Well, yes. I mean, this is an argument that you and I have discussed before in different contexts. If we want to have the same effect as our opponents, we have to make just as much, if not more, noise than they do.
Yes.
Don't always leave it to them to make the running in cultural stakes or in political stakes. And I think it is one of those instances where if you value what the BBC at its core stands for, which I do, I believe in the principles, the Reithian principles, I just feel they've been badly let down over the past quarter of the century by the institution that is supposed to institute them.
We don't have much time, but I just want your final thought on this. Is the licence fee over? Because we've had these debates back and forth, but it looks very much like it's going to go, doesn't it?
Well, if the BBC keeps shooting itself in the foot like this, why shouldn't it be?
Well, certainly with the Gary Lineker situation, I think they have, haven't they?
Yeah, well, quite. What would you rather have, 24 BBC singers or one Gary Lineker? Which adds more to the gaiety of nations and the betterment of human civilization? I don't think it's a football commentator.
And I think from your calculations, it would be roughly the same cost,
Yeah, it's about the same. £1.5 million here.
So we lose Lineker, keep the singers?
That should be the title of the next programme that we do.
Yes.
Lose Lineker, keep the whole hour on why we should have more classical music and less Gary Lineker.
I think you've just solved the problem. David Alder-Bolt, thanks very much for having me. So that's it for the first hour on Free Speech Nation, but there is lots more to come tonight. After the break, I'm going to be speaking about the impact that activists fighting the culture war are having on the arts, plus some more questions from our wonderful live studio audience. And I'll have my panel back in the room. That's Francis Foster and Jonathan Cogan. So don't go anywhere.
On Mark Dolan tonight, following Wednesday's budget, you can debate tax cuts all you like. The elephant in the room is that Britain lives beyond its means. In my take at 10, the toxic legacy of the SNP is collapsing like a house of cards. My Mark Meets guest is Tony Blair's former flatmate and ex-Justice Secretary Lord Charlie Faulkner. Plus, Anne Widdecombe, Edwina Curry and the finest political commentators in the country reacting to tomorrow's papers. A busy show. We're live at 9.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, following Wednesday's budget, you can debate tax cuts all you like. The elephant in the room is that Britain lives beyond its means. In my take at 10, the toxic legacy of the SNP is collapsing like a house of cards. My Mark Meets guest is...
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including more questions from our studio audience, and we'll be asking if so-called woke capitalism has failed. But let's get a news update first from Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary says Rwanda is ready to receive migrants and she hopes to start deportation flights by the summer. Suella Braverman has continued her visit to Rwanda, where earlier today she met with students from Kepler, a non-profit university programme where at least 25% of its students are refugees. Ms Braverman also attended a street fair which was organised to celebrate Commonwealth Day. The UK and Rwanda are vowing to step up efforts to tackle migration. The agreement between the two countries has been expanded to include all illegal migrants and not just asylum seekers.
Progress is being made rapidly, and I'm really confident on the back of the progress that I've seen here in Kigali that we will be able to operationalise this world-leading agreement very, very soon. The big point here is that there will be a package of high-quality humanitarian support for people who will be relocated to Rwanda. That, combined with our robust new laws, will enable us to break the business model of the people smuggling gangs.
The deal with Rwanda has cost £140 million, which Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Lisa Nandy says could have been better spent.
We think you should take that money, put it into the National Crime Agency, create a cross-border cell that disrupts the criminal gangs and send the clearest possible message to those criminal gangs that their behaviour won't be tolerated and that will bring them to account should they persist. Instead, we've had more and more of the tough talk from this government, and last year the boat crossings hit a record high of 45,000. It's not working, and it's about time the government recognised that.
Switzerland's biggest bank, UBS, will take over its rival Credit Suisse in a government-backed deal. Credit Suisse shares fell by 24% on Wednesday to a record low amid fears of a wider European banking crisis. The Swiss president has praised the move, saying it's the best solution to provide confidence in the Swiss financial market. The deal includes $100 billion worth of 100 billion Swiss francs, in liquidity assistance for both banks. The Bank of England has also welcomed the move, saying the UK banks remain safe and sound. And the King has paid tribute to the late Queen on the first Mother's Day since her death last September. The royal family tweeted a photo of Charles as a baby standing on the Queen's lap. A picture of the Queen consort with her mother was also posted. The Prince and the Princess of Wales shared a picture of their children with Kate, with a message saying Happy Mother's Day from our family to yours. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Culture warriors are, by their nature, destructive. They believe that our society is broken, that it is irredeemably racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic and all the other phobias that they invent, and that it must be demolished and reconstructed from scratch. Culture warriors believe that the ongoing project of social liberalism has failed and that we need to implement new authoritarian measures to fix society of its ailments. And this includes restrictions on freedom of speech and sometimes even compelled speech. They believe that children ought to be taught new pseudo-religious creeds, such as that we all have an innate gender identity, a gendered soul, if you like, and that all white children are complicit in white supremacy. They oppose the colour blindness espoused by the great Dr. Martin Luther King. They believe in re-engineering society so that we have equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. They generally show a lack of compassion or empathy or the capacity to forgive and have developed a system of retribution known as cancel culture. As I have argued many times, the closest synonym for what we now call woke is anti-liberal. I've also pointed out that much of this has been well-intentioned, but that doesn't make it right. And from a personal perspective, the one thing that I really can't forgive is the impact that these activists fighting their culture war have had on the arts. With the rise of identity politics and the institutional capture that has come with it, many of us have seen how the creative industries have been enervated. The theatre has been particularly impacted, with most new plays only being commissioned if they satisfy the diversity requirements of the new state religion, and if they are seen to be promoting the correct message. Conformism is now demanded from the most independent of minds. Those of you who enjoy going to the cinema or watching streaming services such as Netflix will have noticed that many of the shows and films that are now produced are sermons dressed up as entertainment. Divisive social justice boilerplate is smuggled in wherever possible, and the audience can't quite shake the feeling that it's being hectored. Major prizes in the realms of theatre, film and literature are given to activists or to creatives who use their platforms to spread the sacred creed of intersectionality. Critics are complicit too, lauding work that has the approved values and damning those that don't. It all starts to feel like state-sanctioned art, propaganda for the establishment, and that's why so much of it feels bloodless and dispensable. And worse still, writers, artists, musicians, comedians, poets, anyone in the creative arts understands that they must toe the line in order to be commissioned and to receive the plaudits they so desire. This doesn't mean that there aren't exceptionally talented artists producing good work, but it does mean that their work is somewhat sanitised. And it definitely means that the most innovative of minds are stifled and unable to find work. That is not to suggest that art cannot be political or pedagogic. One of my favourite books growing up was Tom Brown's School Days, which is explicitly preachy, but a fine book nonetheless. And doubtless you'll remember The Death of Joe in Bleak House, where Charles Dickens halts the narrative to lecture the wealthy reader on the plight of the poor. Dead, Your Majesty, dead, my lords and gentlemen, and dying thus around us every day. The novel momentarily turns into a moral sermon, but it's still one of Dickens' most accomplished achievements. And yet, it's also the part of the novel that is the least effective. Perhaps it's a matter of taste, but I've always found that didactic art is the least interesting. I'm with Oscar Wilde, who explained in the preface to The Picture of Dorian Gray that vice and virtue are simply materials for artists. There is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book, he said. Books are well written or badly written, that is all. I don't read novels for lectures in morality. If I wanted that, I'd go to a church. In one of the rare moments when he got it wrong, George Orwell claimed that all art is propaganda. In truth, propagandistic art is often the most banal, the essence of creativity is individuality. Art is, as Zola put it, life seen through a temperament. When artists are expected to parrot the accepted views of the establishment, they cannot be said to be producing art at all. Rather, they are slaves to another person's vision. Some of the greatest artists throughout history have had to work under oppressive regimes or in fealty to the religious or political beliefs of those in power. But great artists find a way to be subversive within those constraints. How else was Michelangelo able to produce erotic imagery in the Sistine Chapel, right in the heart of the Vatican? He had his detractors, of course. The papal master of ceremonies said that his nudes were more fitting for a bathhouse or a tavern. And in response, Michelangelo painted the figure of Minos, judge of the dead in the underworld, with this man's face and added some donkey ears and a snake biting his genitals. But his nude paintings weren't removed. He had found a way to work within the system. William Shakespeare gives us another example of a genius who found a way to work within oppressive constraints. Shakespeare composed over 100 love sonnets from one man to another, which were circulated in private until there was an openly gay king on the throne. But he found a way to represent a homoerotic relationship in his play Twelfth Night between Antonio and Sebastian. The way he did it is he just had to make sure that one of them was married off at the end of the play to get around the restrictions of the time period in which he lived. But today, something is different. What happens when all the artists are in lockstep? What if all the artists suddenly decided that their visions ought to be subordinated to the promotion of the ideology of the ruling class? The woke movement has created the conditions within which art is unlikely to flourish. The demands for self-censorship are too extreme. That's why we so often hear stories of books being removed from library shelves, sometimes even destroyed if they contain outdated stereotypes. It's why sensitivity readers at Puffin rewrote Roald Dahl's novels. It's why comedians have had their shows cancelled by promoters and venues. It's because these new Puritans see art as just another means by which the privileged can perpetuate their privilege. For them, Raphael's Transfiguration is little more than pigments on wood, daubed by a powerful white man in the interests of other powerful white men. We find ourselves in the bizarre situation where those who are incapable of understanding great art have nonetheless become the gatekeepers of the artistic industries. My hope is that while this cultural revolution is in full swing, a few great artists may still find a way to navigate around the constraints demanded by those in power. It won't be easy because so many artists are, as I say, now in lockstep, and those who are not are often mercilessly attacked. It seems unlikely that the woke movement will ever produce anything of lasting artistic value. So for the sake of our artistic legacy, let's hope that this culture war is short-lived. Now, after the break on Free Speech Nation, it's time we got some more questions. We've got our studio audience here, so we're going to ask them some questions right now. We're going to... Oh, no, sorry. I'm being told that's not what we're going to do. We're going to go to you, Jonathan Cogan, to respond to what I just said.
Great monologue. Really enjoyed that. I agree with, I would say, 98% of it.
98%.
2% of it I didn't understand, so that was... a couple of words I tried to remember.
No, but look, am I being paranoid? Is there a sense in which, you know... I just don't think anything great in the artistic realm is being produced at the moment.
Okay.
Is that me being a conservative?
No, in terms of sort of mainstream Hollywood movies, there are a lot of great shows. When they become, you know, they imbue it with this woke ideology, it really takes you out of it, and it becomes boring, and it becomes, you know, conformist. That being said, because there is this push against, you know, the liberalism that we like in our art, there is great comedy now. You have people pushing back against that, and there'll be nothing to push back against if there wasn't this boot trying to stamp it down.
But there's something very interesting. I mean, like, so I went to the theatre recently. I don't want to say what the production was because I actually thought it was brilliant, but it was going so well, and then there was a moment about halfway through when there was this obvious lecture sort of shoehorned in, and you just thought, oh my God, I don't need this. You know, I like the idea of theatre, you know, exploring moral ambiguity, for instance, not just hectoring its audience about what they should believe. It's boring, right?
It is really, really boring. I'm rereading Hubert Selby Jr.'s Last Exit to Brooklyn. I don't know if you know it. I
haven't read that.
It's widely regarded as one of the great American novels of the late 20th century, and he was talking about Brooklyn at the time was very impoverished, including one character who is transgender in the book.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because the character of Georgie is portrayed as a human being with flaws, with faults, and at the same time showing that the struggle that this person had every single day of their lives living in 1950s Brooklyn, where they were isolated by their family, they were ostracised, yet at the same time there were still people who loved and cared for them. And you realised as you were reading the book, what made it really refreshing is that I wasn't getting an archetype, I wasn't getting a lecture, I was just getting a beautifully written description of a character.
So that's really interesting, because what sensitivity readers are doing in the publishing industry is they say, for example, you're a straight writer and you write a gay character into your novel, they'll come along and say, well, if the gay character is saying things that are not very nice, then that's problematic because you're painting gay people a certain way. But gay people aren't morally pure. They're the same as everyone else. They have flaws and all the rest of it. So why are we having this patronising...
Imagine becoming a sensitivity reader. Imagine wanting to do that.
Oh, amazing.
How do you become it? What kind of... Do you just get affected by everything? Like, I found my calling. How do you do it?
So this is someone who is basically paid to find offence at things.
Yeah.
I mean, what a job.
The Guardian journalist. Yeah.
Basically a Guardian journalist.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy job. But, I mean... I agree with what you're saying. Like, from the start of that book, you've got a really well-fleshed-out character who happens to be transgender and there's their struggles and everything, and that just sounds like an incredibly well-written, interesting piece. When it's sort of these archetypes just shoehorned in, then it's... Well, what's the point of that?
Well, we're going to get later to the non-binary bison on one of Netflix's new series, and you do kind of think that is definitely shoehorned in.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that was integral to the plot, was it? That's them preaching, saying to the parents, look, you better teach your children to misuse pronouns and use they, them as singular.
I mean, yeah,
well, maybe Shakespeare would have written about a non-binary bison if he'd lived long enough.
Exit pursued by non-binary bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To he or not to he.
Very good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right, enough of this, because I don't like puns. OK, after the break on Free Speech Nation, it'll be time that we get some more questions, of course. We have a lovely studio audience here. I want to hear what they've got to say. So we'll see you in just a few minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So let's get some more questions from the audience. We've got a question from Liddy. Am I pronouncing that right, Liddy?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your question?
Are children's books becoming overly sexualized?
Yeah, there was an interesting article this week by Guy Adams. This was in the Mail, and he's been talking about how parents at the American school in London have been finding this really shocking material on the library bookshelves, and this is for children as young as 10. Really, really sexually explicit stuff. The Mail has done this investigation. The books have been taken out of circulation. The contents are going to be reviewed. I have to be honest, though. You know, I always think people are, you know, panicking about nothing. But then I looked at the contents of the books, and it's basically pornography.
Really? And
this is it's certainly it doesn't present itself as pornography, but it is sexually explicit to the degree of pornography. So why is that? In cartoon form, albeit. But why is that there for kids as young as 10?
Well, because you need to... If you think about it, most kids get an iPhone, at the age of around 11, 12?
Yes.
So they're going to go straight into the hardcore pornography. So you need to kind of... You know,
being serious. Well, there is an argument there, isn't there? They're saying that, you know, kids are going to be exposed to this stuff anyway. So the teaching materials around sex education may as well be explicit.
Well, the problem with all of that stuff is that it is not the role of the schools to do any of that. The role of sex education, a lot of it is about biology, and it's teaching kids about biology, what it means to be a sexual person, the repercussions that can happen if you have sex and when you have sex. And to be honest with you, the sex education lessons aren't in as much depth as they should be. But to go down the route of turning a child into a sexual being is completely wrong.
It feels dodgy to me. And also, I think there's something else about these books. The books that have been found on the library shelves in the American school are very much ideological. They're very much telling the kids, you have an innate gender identity, even though 99% of people don't believe that's true. It's basically... it'd be like having hardcore religious books, sort of saying you must follow the word of Baal, the fertility god, or whatever.
Balenciaga. No, I mean, it doesn't seem appropriate for children, this kind of thing. I remember thinking Mr. Tickle was quite erotic when I read that back in the day,
Yeah, but that's your own thing. It's your own problem. It does explain a lot, though.
It does,
It really does.
My behaviour in the break room in GB,
That's outrageous. I mean, the thing about the American school in London as well, this is the school, I should point out, that was segregating children by skin colour for after-school activities.
What could go wrong with that?
You know, well, this isn't the point. It's obviously been ideologically captured.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive day school in London, and it's implementing racist policies. So, I mean, you know, this is not...
And porn for kids.
And porn for goodness sake, But why is it always the posh schools that do this stuff?
Because, look, if you're teaching comprehensive in South London, like I have done, you just don't have time for this stuff. You're too busy trying to quell a riot. Without thinking, what can we do? I'll tell you what, let's segregate them.
There is that.
And they've got their own porn at those schools, so they've got their own.
I wouldn't know, mate.
Jonathan
anyway.
Hogan, goodness me.
No, they bring it in, not they make it, for God's sake.
Right.
Moving on.
Yes, let's move on to another question. This is from Stephanie. Where's Stephanie?
Hi, good evening. Why are male presenters dominating the Saturday evening schedule?
OK, so there's been some concerns that there are a lack of female presenters on TV. It's ridiculous. But particularly on Saturday nights, and the Saturday night output on the BBC and ITV is being monitored. And apparently there are very, very few female presenters in the peak time slots. And so there's been this article about this now. I mean, should I just resign and let a woman host Free Speech Nation instead?
I think you should.
Do it in drag.
I think you should, mate. I
Do
think
it
you
in
should
drag?
Yeah.
Full drag.
Or you can transition and come in as Andrewina.
Andrewina? Why didn't you say Andrea?
No, Andrewina.
Andrewina is better, OK. Do you think... I mean, look, is this just tokenism, or do they have a point?
I think that they may have a point, actually. Right. Maybe we do need more people more people who identify as female. There you go, nailed it. On TV. But also, let's be honest, the reality is no one watches TV anymore. It's a dying medium. It's completely pointless. And actually, if people want breaks in the media, what they need to do is start their own thing, because that is going to prove far more lucrative for them as a platform than it is trying to go into these old-fashioned
What do you think about that?
TV stations.
I mean, isn't it odd for Francis to come on and sort of say no one watches TV on
Hey,
TV?
our viewer is going to be very upset. No, I mean, personally, television is for being on, not for watching, in my opinion. I heard someone say that on the headlines. I've started saying it since. No, I mean, I don't watch a lot of live television myself. I'll watch streaming services and I'll listen to podcasts and I'll follow people on social media. So I kind of agree nowadays the route is to just make your own thing.
Yeah.
But that being said, do we need more women on TV? I mean, sure, if it serves the programme, get whatever's best for the programme, right?
Whatever's best for the programme.
Yeah.
So but don't just hire someone because of their gender, sure.
Of course not, yeah.
Right, okay.
Get whatever makes the best.
OK, well, we've got a question now from John. Where is John? Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Are climate activists being denied their right to free speech by the courts?
OK, so lawyers have told The Guardian that restrictions placed on climate protesters by the courts are narrowing their rights to free expression. So these are 3 activists from Insulate Britain. Do you remember them?
Yep.
They've been jailed for contempt of court, having been told they were not allowed to mention the climate crisis or fuel poverty as motivation for their decision to take direct action. And The Guardian says similar rulings restricting freedom of expression defences are available to peaceful protesters have been made at other trials. What do you think of this, Jonathan?
Well, I mean, I'm fully in favour of people's right to protest.
Yes.
If they're doing essentially antisocial behaviour that goes beyond what's kind of acceptable in protest, not that I really know what the limit is, then I guess that is the issue.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because a lot of the environmental protesters are breaking the law. You know, they're actually committing acts of vandalism and that kind of thing.
Gluing themselves to buses and stuff like that.
Gluing themselves to buses,
Sure.
annoying a lot of people. Protests, however, are meant to be annoying. They've got to be annoying to someone, otherwise there can't be a protest. And I will always defend people's right to peaceful protest. But I think if they are breaking the law, we already have laws that sort of deal with that.
Yeah. So what's the issue here? That they're essentially being prevented from protesting further because they've...
well, it's contempt of court if they do it outside in a certain remit, isn't that right?
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that is actually very interesting about this case is how the Tory government are cracking down on people's right to protest and making it actually far more difficult for people to protest.
Where does that come from?
Well, the reality is it comes from COVID. Because during COVID, there were a lot of people in this country, and myself included initially, who were in support of the lockdown. But what we didn't actually realise at the time was the moment we supported lockdown, we also supported the banning of protests and the banning to congregate in public spaces. So we gave all this power to the government. And when you give power to the government, guess what? A lot of the time, I ain't going to give it back, mate.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And they have this police crime and sentencing bill, which they were pushing through. I know the Lords sort of sent it back.
And there has been this creeping authoritarianism since, you know, the various issues since lockdown. And this is just another example of it, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, surely a thriving democracy needs to have the right to protest.
Oh, I agree.
And, you know,
100%.
with the Tory government sort of saying if a protest is too loud, then the police are allowed to shut it down. Protests allowed?
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
This is not good.
Absolutely.
OK, anyway, we're going to get another question now. This one's from Stuart. Where is Stuart? Hello.
Hello, everyone. Are TV shows guilty of tokenism?
Yes. So there's been a recent YouGov survey suggesting that almost half the British public does not accurately reflect the makeup of society. The suggestion has been that minority groups appear on TV shows and adverts in disproportionate numbers to promote images of diversity. I think we've all noticed this, haven't we? You know, and I don't think it is problematic to point out that it's weirdly disproportionate now. And I can imagine, you know, back in the day when you're watching TV and it's like, everyone's white, everyone's straight. This is weird because that doesn't reflect society.
I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, well, you would, wouldn't you? But you know, on the other hand, but now it does seem very odd, and it does feel like tokenism, doesn't it?
It does feel like tokenism. My girlfriend, who used to work in advertising and is herself a woman of colour, she actually, I'm very liberal, guys, nailed it. But she actually, we were walking past an advert, and she pointed at the girl, and she goes, "What do you notice about her?" And I go, you know, because I was trying not to get into trouble. She goes, we're desperately trying.
She said she's really hot.
Yeah, exactly.
You weren't doing that way.
Well, what do I do? And she went, I don't know. What? And she goes, she is a perfect person for advertising because she is young, attractive, and racially indiscriminate. So it could be in belong to a number of different races, and as a result, that means that she is far more marketable because they can then appeal to numerous different ethnic minority groups.
But is the idea of sort of, changing the makeup of adverts and that kind of thing to sort of preach at the public and say, we think you're all racist and so therefore we need to, is that the idea? I don't know.
No, I think a lot of it is because they want to appeal to all different demographic and all different types of demographics. But also, there is also the reaction in those types of industries where it has been very white for a long time, and people have been panicking. No one wants to look racist, so they're going, right, everyone's black. And then they just go like that.
But, I when I'm watching TV, I'm not going to buy something in an advert if the person selling it is gay. I'm not that shallow. I'm not like, I need to see... I need to feel represented in that
I want
advert.
a gay bank account.
Right, exactly. I find it a bit odd. I feel a bit patronised,
Nationwide? No, that's terrible.
Nationwide?
Yeah. It's more of a building society, I agree.
Even by your standards, that's weak.
It's not good.
Do you feel that you need to see Jewish people sell you Jewish products?
That's kind of what they do, right? No, I shouldn't say that.
It's me.
One thing I saw was Dove, the real beauty Dove. They had a go at The Whale, the film The Whale that won an Oscar or something.
Oh, Brendan Fraser.
Yeah. Because they didn't use legitimately, £400 actors for that
He wore a fat suit.
He wore a fat suit, and Dove were annoyed with him. They're like, you should have used a real chonker. And fair enough.
I don't think they use that language. No, I have seen activists getting annoyed about that film. Saying, why didn't you cast a fat actor?
Yeah.
Well, maybe they're not very good. Maybe they ran out of energy too quickly. I don't know. Anyway, gonna get in a lot of trouble for that. Let's get another question from Karen. Where's Karen? Hi, Karen.
Hi. My question is, should TikTok be banned in the UK?
Oh, this is an ongoing thing. I mean, we've talked a lot on Headliners about TikTok as well. It's obviously the sharing app. It's absolutely everywhere, but there are security concerns because it's from China. And so my understanding about this, and I know now that government officials basically can't have TikTok on their phones.
Yes.
Which does make sense to me. And it's not so much that the company that owns TikTok is spying on you, it's that in China, it's a law that if the government says to any company you have to hand over all your data, they have to hand over all the data. So there is a potential security breach there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is, and you've covered it many times on Headliners, is TikTok in China is completely different to TikTok in the UK.
Is it?
Yes. So TikTok in China promotes activities that the CCP thinks is good for the youth and for culture.
Yeah.
So they will promote things like engineering videos, working hard, getting fit, being a good member of society.
Right.
Whilst here, it's just somebody doing a little dance or someone with their ass hanging out, just waving it about.
God,
I'm glad you've done your research.
Yeah, I have, mate. I'm a professional. That's what I do. You book me, I come in.
I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? So TikTok in China, because the Chinese government are very sort of hot on monitoring what the people can see.
They have the one central app where everything is done through, right? Your bank account, if you want to order an Uber, it's all through WeChat. Is that
they also have thousands and thousands of agents to infiltrate people's discussions online on internet forums and things to steer the conversation into more patriotic ways.
Like, you watch the game, isn't the government good? Like, who is this?
Yeah. They actually do that. I didn't think this was real, but then I had a guest who
That's
wrote a
worse
book
than
about it.
sensitivity reader, yeah.
I mean, that's scary, that sort of stuff,
wild,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely dystopian.
So I think now, actually, the US government are thinking of completely
getting rid of it.
It's
bad for your brain. It melts your brain. Like, I'm not a big social media guy, and I got it just to put some comedy clips up, and I just find myself like.
Is it quite addictive?
Oh yeah, because it's a super stimulus. It's just dopamine hits.
See, all I see is that Twitter account Libs of TikTok, which is really great, and all they do is take videos of the most excessive, bizarre social justice activists, like lecturing you about their pronouns.
The fringe of the fringe.
The absolute fringe of the fringe. And they put it, and so I just think that's all that TikTok is, but it's probably not,
half of it.
No,
is it half of it? Yeah, okay.
There is something called TikTok brain, which is that because this particularly happens to children, they're getting hyper-stimulated all of the time.
Right.
It means that their concentration and their ability to have deferred gratification has been completely eroded.
Yeah, but that's been going on for years. I mean, that's not just TikTok. You go back to Vine. Do you remember Vine? Where
but it's getting
the
more
videos
and
were
more
6 seconds at a time.
But it's just getting progressively more intense. So it's like Vine used to be, you load a video, watch them. Now it's just up, next. Like our producer Richard, his brain is mush. Yeah.
I'll tell him you said that.
He watches.
He's probably watching, to be honest.
Yeah.
So you're genuinely worried about well, I suppose you'd say it's the attention span of
the
kids.
Attention span, it's addictive. Like, I find myself just because it kind of recreates the same thing as, you know, pulling down a one-armed bandit.
Now, I heard about this. So one of the designers of Twitter actually said that, you know, when you pull down to sort of refresh your page on Twitter, it deliberately has a pause that isn't necessary. And it has this pause because it simulates the idea of the anticipation of what you get from a fruit machine. When you pull a fruit machine, you know, you get
and you're up against
scary, isn't it?
You're up against crazy algorithms that your human brain doesn't stand a chance.
So this stuff is deliberately sort of playing on our addictive personality.
And I don't think for any like nefarious reason. I think it's just this is a way to increase engagement and make more money. Except for maybe TikTok could be trying to.
Very sinister. So ban TikTok, we think. Is that our consensus?
Well,
don't let your kids use it, but don't ban it.
Okay. One thing that could be very interesting is that if Trump does get elected, he has made it plain that he wants it banned. And I think he will, I mean, he's said a lot of things, let's be fair, but it's one thing that I think he will actually try and make happen, is to ban TikTok.
Very, very interesting. OK, well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, does the demise of the Silicon Valley Bank mean so-called new capitalism is just as volatile as the old-fashioned kind? See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So last week, the Silicon Valley Bank became the second largest bank to fail in the history of the US. The bank has been taken into government ownership and its holding company has filed for bankruptcy protection in a turn of events which will have worldwide implications. The British arm of the bank has been taken over by HSBC. Fraser Myers, the deputy editor of Spiked, has been writing about this, and he joins me now. Good evening, Fraser.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Now, some people won't know what's going on here. Can you talk us through what has happened?
Yeah, so Silicon Valley Bank is the most important bank in the tech scene. And, you know, big tech is obviously the most important part of the US economy nowadays. You know, it is not quite a majority, but it's a huge part of where, you know, the world's money is going. Around about half of all kind of venture capitalist-backed startups do their banking with Silicon Valley Bank. So its collapse is really, really significant. Essentially what happened was, weirdly, it made too much money.
Okay.
So during the COVID pandemic, you'll remember that central banks slashed interest rates. They started printing money. The Federal Reserve in the US printed $4 trillion.
Yes.
That sent the stock market soaring. Even while the real economy was shut down, we're all stuck in our homes, the tech economy was booming. And Silicon Valley Bank suddenly had more money than it knew what to do with. It grew from, its deposits grew from $50 billion to $220 billion in the space of about 2 years, a quadrupling. All thanks to these kinds of government policies. And then it's looking for places to put its money, and it puts them into government bonds. Normally that's a very safe bet, but now that interest rates have gone up, those bonds look bad. And then when people lose confidence in a bank, they start to pull out their money, and that's what's happened. People are pulling out their money because they know that what it owns is not worth very much.
Yes.
And it's collapsed.
OK, so Silicon Valley...
That's the short
Yeah, that's a very good summary. So Silicon Valley, effectively, you know, they're creating a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
You know, they as you say, are a hub of business activity. But actually, they're not really doing anything that is contributing to the economy. They're not making companies that last, are they?
It's actually all a bit of a mirage. So aside from the big household names that are essentially oligopolies or monopolies, your Facebooks, your Googles or whatever, most of the tech economy is a mirage. It's built on sand. So even Uber doesn't make a profit, for instance. People might be surprised to learn that. So the reason Uber, you know, was able to be so cheap is because it had all this kind of tech money, all this banking money. The idea was that it was going to subsidise your ride very cheaply. It would kind of kill the competition. It would kill, you know, your local cab firm, and then they'd be able to raise the prices again.
Yes.
So there's lots of these kinds of weird strategies going on in the tech world. A lot of the companies don't really make products that are that innovative, but they are selling a dream in a sense. They're always selling. So Uber is not, as an example of something, it's not profitable, but it was going to give us the sharing economy.
Yes.
AI. Everyone is, you know, orgasming over AI at the moment. People have been playing with ChatGPT. It's quite fun, but it's often wrong. And very often wrong. There's a lot of even worse AI products out there. Google's AI product made a mistake about the moon landing, and it's cost Google $100 billion in kind of share losses because it made this very public mistake.
Wow.
Bing has an AI, so Microsoft Bing has this AI called Bard, and it's been insulting its users, it's been threatening them, it's been blackmailing them. But we're supposed to believe, with the Silicon Valley magic, this is going to bring us to the fourth industrial revolution.
So is this the idea that, like you say, they're selling a dream, but it's the idea that they are sort of at the heart of innovation, and that it doesn't really matter if they're not making money as such, because they are creating the future.
Exactly. No one wants to be like the person who said in the 1990s, oh, well, who needs the internet? No one wants to be that person.
Yeah.
And so people are buying into just about anything.
But there is something to that, isn't there? I mean, like, for instance, you know, the mission to Mars in the 1960s, you could, oh, mission to the moon, sorry, you could say, well, that was a waste of time. What was the point in that? That was aspiration.
I agree with that completely. It's really important, and we need people to take risks. That's absolutely critical. I mean. That's absolutely critical to our future. We need people to take risks, and fine, fair enough if they're rewarded for it. But I think what Silicon Valley has managed to do is pull the wool over people's eyes. So they're seeing this tech vision. They're often seeing, there's also a woke vision often sold.
Yes.
You know, there's a kind of moral purpose behind a lot of these companies. So if you think about Sam Bankman-Fried, people might know him, this sort of the king of crypto, who was wooing Tony Blair and Bill Clinton. He had this philosophy called effective altruism.
Yes.
So he wasn't just selling a product, he was selling a kind of woke politics too. And that means that people lose their skepticism. They stop asking the reasonable questions of actually, OK, so how does this make money? What does the product actually do? A lot of the time, there's no product at all.
Yes.
Silicon Valley Bank was giving money to firms that don't make any products.
And that's a big worry, because are these the sort of people who we want to be creating the future? I mean, if they have this ideological bent, we saw this, there was a viral thing this week where someone had asked ChatGPT to write a joke about Kamala Harris in the style of Norman MacDonald, and it came back saying, I can't do that, that would be offensive. And then they asked whether they would do the same joke about Donald Trump, and of course it came back straight away and did so. So you have a politically partisan group creating this software, this technology that is hopefully going to, well, from their their perspective, it's going to colonise the planet. That's not good, is it?
No, that's not good. It's very dangerous. There's a real political monoculture. So as well as lots of people, you know, kind of following the herd and not seeing the risks of these products or not seeing that they're a bit useless, yes, politically they're all the same. I mean, if you look at the kind of donations that they give to politics, it's more than 90% they give to the Democratic Party.
Yes.
For instance. And Silicon Valley...
definitely left-leaning, I mean, without a doubt, yeah.
And Silicon Valley Bank, which failed, you know, was very big on diversity, very big on this environmental, social and governance stuff. And in terms of diversity, it had a very diverse board, ticks all the boxes in terms of race, gender, sexuality. On its board of directors, it only had one person with top-level experience in banking.
Wow. Well, no wonder it fails.
So it's not a great... yeah, exactly. So it's not a great surprise. These are not necessarily the brightest people giving oversight to this stuff.
So are they hoping that one day things like Twitter, although that's now Elon Musk, of course, but that these things will suddenly become profitable somehow?
That's the idea. And, you know, some of the big firms have become profitable because they've become monopolies, essentially. But a lot of them fail. And a lot of them, you would think, you know, if you were a 12-year-old, you'd understand that this is not going to work. So one of the companies I referenced in my article is called Juicero. It earned, it managed to get $120 million in investors. It's just a juicer, but it has to connect to Wi-Fi for some reason, which no one quite understands. SoftBank, this Japanese bank, which is a big funder of tech stuff, they gave $300 million to a dog walking app.
Really?
Right, yeah, and so there's these ridiculous, like, there's the ridiculous, and then there's the fraudulent. So you have people like Elizabeth Holmes, who's been jailed for fraud for her company Theranos.
Yes.
The product didn't work. It was meant to test. It was meant to be an all-in-one test for every illness possible. Of course, it didn't work. It was made up.
Yeah.
No one thought to actually check this out or ask questions.
So this is just
endorsed by Joe Biden, endorsed by Walgreens, the big pharmacy company. Everyone is just buying into the hype.
So this is just incompetence on a massive scale.
Incompetence on a massive scale, but also it's a con. It's a belief that these people are different. They're the future. You know, you see the tech gurus. They dress differently. They're not like the Wall Street banker. They haven't got the pinstripe suit. They're in a hoodie. They're lounging around. You know, they're different. They're new. Sam Bankman-Fried, funny enough, he was on a high-level meeting with this firm called Sequoia Capital, which was also involved with Silicon Valley Bank, and he was playing video games while he was in the meeting. And instead of saying, "Who is this idiot? Why are we dealing with him?" they gave him hundreds of millions of dollars because they thought they were so impressed by his nonchalance and his, you know, demeanour while he's sitting around in a beanbag. So, yeah, you know, it's in some ways it has a lot in common with the old capitalism. It's just as greedy, it's just as risky. But on the other hand, there's something quite new about the way that, people are falling for stuff because they're being sold this dream, whether it's the woke dream or the dream of the kind of new future tech industrial revolution or whatever it might be.
This is absolutely fascinating, but we have run out of time. Fraser Myers, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So after the break on Free Speech Nation... After the break on Free Speech Nation, Hugh Grant gives a bizarre interview and Netflix introduces us to a non-binary bison. OK, so see you in a few minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So it's time for Social Sensations, which is the part of the show that we devote to the things that have gone a bit viral this week. And first up, this is the red carpet interview with Hugh Grant, which a lot of us will have seen, but let's have a little refresher.
It was such an amazing film. I really loved it. I love a thriller. How fun is it to shoot something like that?
Well, I'm barely in it. I'm in it for about 3 seconds.
Yeah, but still, you showed up and you had fun, right?
Almost.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very awkward. To be honest, though, I'm on Hugh Grant's side here. Yeah. Like, she was the most vacuous interviewer, asking, who are you wearing? Don't you enjoy being in that film that you were in for 2 seconds? And it was just boring and banal. I think...
Someone in Hollywood vacuous.
Yeah, I know. Go on.
Yeah, but it's the Oscars. It's boring and banal. If you don't want it to be boring and banal, then don't go to the Oscars.
But I thought it was quite refreshing that he just sort of said, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
I mean, he's just a bit of a grumpy git, isn't he?
So what?
Yeah. Look, she was just trying to do her job. He was being a bit of a... I'm not going to say what he was doing.
No, I don't agree with you at all. I think that interviewers should be a bit more creative and should be coming up with interesting questions. Not just who are you wearing?
But it was protest behaviour from him, but also fair enough to protest it. You could say, I think the whole thing's ridiculous. You don't care. I don't care. No one cares. Why are we doing this charade? But at the same time, he was making that girl's job quite difficult, which is kind of funny, but also a bit harsh.
Maybe. I don't know. OK, well, let's move on. We've got this cartoon featuring a bison with a dilemma.
Well, my heart says that the way I feel most myself is to go by the name Fred. That's because I'm non-binary, and Fred is the name that fits me best. And I also use they and them, because calling me a she or a he doesn't feel right to me.
It's really embarrassing. I mean, you know, they say they're going after kids, but that's an explicitly ideological thing pushed at a child. Yeah. But I suppose people have always done that. I mean, you could argue that the Chronicles of Narnia are pushing the idea of Christianity onto kids. Of course. You know, but this is basically the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it is basically the same. It's just really badly shoehorned in
there. It's really embarrassing, isn't it?
It is. It's just really bad writing, because if you think about great writing, it should be seamless and it should be entirely natural so that you believe it. There's no point of that where you actually think, yes, a character would say that.
The trouble as well is, like, speaking as someone who used to be an English teacher, you know, if young kids start using they and them as singular pronouns, I'm going to have to be correcting a lot more essays because that's grammatically incorrect.
Of course.
And it's the bison's fault.
And let's be fair, the little gits can't even write at the best of times,
no, exactly.
let alone when they're having to play with language like this.
Why are cartoon bison teaching our kids to be illiterate?
Well, I feel they really missed a trick. I thought it was going to be a bison, like, oh, here's my bison, but they didn't. They didn't go for that.
That would have been funny,
That would have
Never do that again, man.
I
Don't ever do that again.
I thought that's where they were going to go with it, but they didn't. They took it a level further.
OK, well, anyway, look, this is the part of the show where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. You've been very kindly emailing in your problems. Our first dilemma is from Matt in Staines. Matt says, "Hi, Andrew. I am a romantic type, but whenever I treat my wife to a candlelight dinner or weekend getaway, my best friend takes the mick relentlessly. However, now he is loved up, he's taking his better half to Amsterdam to look at some tulips. Do I call him out for double standards? No, call him out for a terrible holiday. Like going to Amsterdam to look... You don't go to Amsterdam to look at tulips, do you?
No, they're both going for a bit of sex tourism.
Yeah, clearly.
And
drugs, probably.
And drugs as well.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at tulips. Your friend is pathetic. Dump him.
Or a tulip is actually a kind of joint. It's it's literally just a joint with a massive thing on the end.
Is that you? That sounds like you know about this culture.
Oh, I've met some.
You've met people.
Marijuana users in my time.
You've read about it.
I've read about them.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, you have a girlfriend, don't you? I think?
Yeah. Why so surprised? Yeah.
No, I wasn't surprised. But do you take her to see flowers? Do you take her to a garden centre for a weekend?
She does like a garden centre. She's into plants,
right?
And crystals and tarot.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is she a witch?
She would say she was a witch.
Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
No, so I took her on holiday for her birthday.
But are you a romantic type?
Am I romantic? A little bit.
I can't see it.
A little bit. Yeah.
Are you a romantic, Andrew?
Yeah.
You are?
No, not really. OK, let's move on now because it's getting too personal. Got a dilemma here from an artist called David. David says, "I've had a painting removed from an online exhibition because I objected to their use of preferred pronouns. Trouble is, I don't really care. Am I too apathetic?" Well, you know, it's interesting with these questions. Like, well, I don't know. Like, should you get involved in these cultural battles, or should you just walk away?
Was it a painting of a bison, by any chance?
It was a bison, yeah. Well, I don't know. Probably a bison. What do you make of that? I mean, should people get involved? But the thing is, though, that's your painting, therefore not being in the exhibition.
Yeah.
That feels like you should stand up for yourself a little bit when it comes to that, shouldn't you?
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to these types of things, everybody has to make their own judgment, because it's very easy for somebody to go, well, you should get involved, and this person, their career's on the line, they've got a mortgage, they've got kids, whatever else.
It's easy for us, isn't it?
It is easy for us, because the problem is with us, we can't keep our mouths shut.
Well, but there's that. But also, like, I can get involved in criticising culture warriors because I know I'm not going to get fired for it, because it's kind of part of my job. So it's the ideal situation. But I get it. A lot of people, if they do object, they get in trouble.
Is that the hill they want to die on? That's the question.
What, the painting thing?
Yeah. Like, does he, like you say, does he want to make this his thing, or is that going to kind of ruin his chances of becoming a great painter?
Well, we haven't given him an answer, really, have we? We just sort of said, go on.
Don't worry about it, Dave, you're right.
There we go.
Yeah. Keep painting.
Keep painting. Yeah. I don't think that's any kind of answer, but anyway. Thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. Excuse me, I just swallowed a tooth. This was the week when Oxfam tackled the colonial English language. Donald Trump claimed that he's about to be arrested, and Netflix supported the plight of a non-binary bison. Thank you ever so much to my panel, Jonathan Cogan and Francis Foster. Don't forget that Francis Foster is going to be performing at the Etc. Theatre in London very soon. What date is that, Francis?
It's on the 5th of April.
5th of April, so do go and get tickets for that. Jonathan Cogan, I believe, will be supporting, so you could skip that bit and then go and see Francis. If you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you can definitely do that. Please just go to www.sroaudiences.com and come and join us. And stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's next. And Headliners is at 11 o'clock tonight. Thanks for watching.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled week ahead. We will see rain, heavy showers at times too, and fairly brisk winds, and temperatures around, if not a little above average in the south. Sunday's high pressure well and truly out the way, and now over the next few days, low pressure systems moving in from the Atlantic. Tightly packed isobars towards the middle of the week will bring some strong winds and high waves around some western coasts in particular. A north-south split this evening time. Outbreaks of rain across the northern half of the UK could be heavy into the early hours across northwest England over the higher ground and into southwest Scotland too. A lot of cloud around tonight, quite damp conditions starting to develop into the southwest come the end of the night. Temperatures as a result, with a lot of cloud and rain around, will be on the mild side, 7 to 9 Celsius generally to start Tuesday morning. A wet start across Scotland, northern parts of England, this rain pushing northeastwards through the day, brightening up behind. There will be some sunny spells, but into the afternoon, this will trigger some heavy showers, perhaps the odd thunderstorm too. And then the next batch of wet and windy weather moves in from the Atlantic in the far west. Stays unsettled over the next few days, winds increasing further. See you soon.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White as